One of the great things people love about smart nodes is the ability to use web wizards to configure their devices. And now, the wizards have come to the cloud. Welcome to the introductory video about having web wizards embedded in the Patton Cloud. So far, if you wanted to provide a configuration file to one of your devices, you had to generate the configuration file offline, and then you could use the Patton Cloud to provision that configuration file. Now, Patton Cloud itself is able to generate such a configuration file based on a web wizard. So the wizard provides the user with a very simple web form where some parameters can be entered, which are completely user-defined. And then these parameters are filled into a template, and that generates a configuration. The feature is split into two parts. One is wizard execution, and the other is the wizard editor. If you go to your organization, you can see if one or both of these features are enabled. The wizard execution feature is enabled for standard, advanced, and professional plans, and the wizard editor is only available for advanced and professional plans. And the trial subscription provides functionality for both, of course, for a limited amount of time. So in this lesson, we want to focus on wizard execution, which allows you to execute predefined wizards, but not create them. So let's see what a typical process looks like to set this up. The first step is to set up provisioning using such a wizard. So we go to the provisioning menu, and you see that there's a new wizard item here, which shows you all the predefined wizards. The next step is to create a provisioning profile, which uses this wizard. A provisioning profile is basically a link between a certain action, the how to provision, and a number of devices. So let's create a new profile, the ESPC wizard for this example, and we select the provisioning method wizard, and then we select one of the predefined wizards here. Optionally, we could also enable the Cloud Connect feature, which automatically inserts a configuration snippet that automatically connects the device to the cloud afterwards. But in our wizard example here, this is not needed because the Cloud Connections snippet is already embedded in the wizard. Okay. So this is everything we need at this point. We save the ESPC wizard. All right. And now we are basically set up. And this you only have to do once. Now let's look at what to do for each device that you want to register that will use this wizard to provision the device. Under the provisioning menu, we go to the Devices tab, and you see that there is already a number of devices registered, and they are all connected to the cloud. What you see here in the middle is the provisioning profile that was used for each device. So obviously no one has used the wizard profile that we just created. And then here we see some information about the provisioning status. We'll talk more about this in a minute. And now let's register a new device. We click on Register Devices. We enter one or multiple serial numbers, or select a file that contains the serial numbers. And then we select one of the provisioning profiles. So basically, here we define what type of device this is and how it should be provisioned. We select the ESPC wizard here and click Register. We get a small summary about the registered devices. Let's close that. And as you can see, we now have this new device registered which is linked already to the ESPC wizard. And this is in an unconfigured state. Unconfigured means that although the device is linked to the ESPC wizard, in this case, the actual parameters for that wizard are not yet defined, so the device is not configured yet. We can launch the wizard and configure the device by clicking on the menu icon here to the right and selecting the Configure ESPC Network Setup menu. So the menu name that appears after the word configure depends on the wizard that you actually linked. Typically, this is the name of the wizard. This launches the wizard, and now you can enter all the variables, all the fields that are left to be defined for each device. So these are the fields, the parameters that differ between the devices that use the same wizard. Let's do it for our new device. Let's call it Demo 2. We will give it a LAN address, net mask. We set a default gateway, and the DNS server. Now we click Save, and by saving we actually generate the configuration file from these parameters, which is stored in the cloud itself in the file drive. You see now that the status changed from unconfigured to ready, which means that the configuration is ready to be picked up by the device. So if the device is rebooted, it will get the configuration from here. By the way, if you wonder where this configuration file is stored, if we click on the device and go to the Files tab here in the Cloud folder, we see that there is a new file called Wizard Generated Config, which contains the configuration that the wizard generated and that the device will pick up. Now let's go back to the device list and see what happens if the device is powered up, which I'll do right now. And so the device has been restarted and has tried to get the configuration. And the cloud has successfully provisioned the configuration. So the state is now provisioned. We show we have one successful provisioning attempt, and this was a few seconds ago, and the device is now rebooting and should come up with the new configuration. All right, the device is now powered up and connected to the cloud with the new configuration. We know this because the status is online, so the device is connected to the cloud. And we also see that the number of provisioning attempts has increased from 1 to 2. So after boot up, the device asked for the same configuration again and found out that there were no configuration changes, and so it did not reboot again. What you can also see is that the host name that we entered, Demo2, has been applied, so this configuration is now active. If you want to change one of the configuration parameters, then we just re-enter with the wizard. We click on the right-hand menu and choose Reconfigure. So the wizard is launched again, and as you can see, all the values are read back from the previous configuration. So if we change this to Demo_2, for example, and click Save again, we see that the provisioning state goes back to ready. Now we basically have to wait until the device contacts the cloud again for re-provisioning. And this depends on how the configuration is set up for that device. Typically it happens once a day at midnight, but you are free to configure it as you want on your devices. Also, if we change the provisioning profile of a device, for example, if we disable provisioning altogether, the profile is none, and then we go back to the same wizard provision profile again, we are back in the unconfigured state, because the system cannot track whether the wizard you are linked to now is actually identical to the wizard that it was linked to before. So we assume that you have to reconfigure the device again. But if you do the configure step again, you will just have to confirm that you're happy with the same values that you entered before. Click Save, and then you're back into a ready state, ready for the device to pick up the configuration. And that wraps up this lesson about wizard execution. Thanks for watching.